This is the Voigtländer 40mm f1.2 Noctan. It is ridiculously compact, has an aperture of f1.2 and is affordable. Sounds like a good always on, right? But the question is it good? Or is there a trade-off? Oh, and this lens has a problem, but more on that later. In the pricey world of Leica, it's always nice if you can save a few bucks. Especially if it's something like f1.2 and Noctilux equivalent. But as much as we would love to have cheaper lenses, we do not want to have lenses that feel cheap on the body. So, how is the haptic of this lens? Well, the focus ring is buttery smooth, the aperture ring is very nice dampened, it's out of beautiful metal. I would say it's almost Leica quality. One thing that I absolutely appreciate about a Leica M system is its compact size, and this lens is no exception. It is ridiculously small. I mean, look at this. This is an f1.2 lens, and why it's pretty short and pretty small? Well, it's quite dense. This lens has a little bit of heft to it, but if you compare it to something like the Canon 50mm f1.2 that weighs around 960 grams, I mean, this one, it's 330 grams, so in comparison to this one, it's an absolute lightweight. So to sum the haptics up, I think it is something that fits very, very nicely into the Leica M system. It feels almost like a Leica M lens. It's a bit cheaper and it just looks good on the Leica body. But now that we have spoken about haptics, how about the optical side? Is this a performer or does it just look good? Okay, I mean, everyone can make an f1.2 lens, but there are often a few issues with this one. So there are a few questions. First is sharpness overall, then sharpness at f1.2, or let's better say usability at f1.2, and then flaring and bokeh. The best way to find it out is, let's look at some images. Okay, let's start with this image. This is my dog. I shot it in the park and you can see a few things right away. One is the crazy background separation, and one thing where f1.2 shines a lot. And that is background separation even if you're a bit further away from the subject. Look how creamy the trees in the background are. But the question is the dog still sharp? Well, let's see. Let's pinch in a bit. And as you can see, it is absolutely usable. I would also say it is sharp. Next up, let's look at overall sharpness. I mean, at f1.2, it's usable, it's not crazy sharp. But what is if we stop this lens down? Well, let's go into the other extreme and let's look at this coin. And if that's not sharp, I mean, you can already see it, but let's pinch in. And now look at all the scratches and all the details. This is as sharp as it can get. I mean, do you really need a sharper lens? I don't know. This is at f8 and I think it is absolutely razor sharp. So sharpness top down, check. Now, lenses like this one tend to flare, especially at f1.2. And this one doesn't. So the only question is, does it bother me? Or is it ugly? Or is it part of the character? And of course it's part of the character, but let's look at this image. Here you can see a pretty big flare. The sun hits the lens and then there is a flare. It's this, if this lens is hit by the sun, it creates a flare. I have to say I haven't used a lens hood here. You could use one, but there doesn't come a lens hood with this one. And yeah, this is where Voigtländer learned from Leica. The lens hood itself costs, I think, over $100, or at least around $100. Okay, we've seen a few images. Let's summarize it up. It is usable at f1.2. It is, of course, a bit soft. It has that dreamy look at f1.2. It creates crazy background separation at f1.2, and it gets sharper if we're stopping down. At f8, it is razor sharp. It is not apo sharp, but that's not what this lens is supposed to be. And yes, it flares a bit. It has character. If you're aware of that, That's not a problem. If you don't like it, don't shoot into the sun. And if you like it, well, you can use it for your creative ideas. Now let's compare this lens to Leica. The price of this lens is around $1,000. And why this sounds a lot at the beginning? Well, the Leica equivalent, the one that comes the closest to this one, would be the 50mm 1.2 Noctilux. And that lens is 7 times as much. So if we compare to Leica, this is a very cheap lens. And optically, honestly, the 51.2, I think that this one optically is even better, and they also look the same. What they have, no, they do not look the same, but they look similar, let's say that. The 50 Nocton is a bit bigger, but they have the same focus ring. But honestly, you can't really compare them, because this is a 40mm and Leica doesn't even have any 40mm. They never built a 40mm. And that's where we come to the problem that I was talking about at the beginning. And that is that this lens, 40mm, there is no frame in the rangefinder. So if you're shooting 40mm on the Leica M, you do not really know what you're getting, how your final image looks like. And at the beginning, I struggled quite a bit with that. But I found a way that helped me shooting this lens. And that is, if you mount this lens on the M, it shows you the frame lines of the 50mm. And with the frame lines of 50, there are also the frame lines of 75 shown. And if you put your subject into the range of the 75 lines, you're around 1/3 of the image. I found out that if I place my subject around the 75 lines, I get always a nice composition. And that leads us to another question, and that is f1.2 even focusable on a rangefinder? Well, good question. So let's say you want to focus on the eye of a person that's moving. Good luck. But I think the better question is, when should you use f1.2? Because I mean, it doesn't make sense to shoot a portrait to focus on the eye and the nose is already blurred and the ears. I mean, is that a good portrait? Doesn't f5.6 make more sense in that case? But that's different if we come to a full body portrait, like the one with my dog here that I've shown you before. This is where this lens shines. I mean, that background separation for a full body portrait, that's second to none. And in that case, it's absolutely focusable. I mean, you have to be careful, but it's absolutely doable. After some practicing, yeah, I get good results. Talking about practicing, I said that you have to know when to shoot an f1.2, but honestly, at the beginning, I shot everything at f1.2. I mean, why should you buy an f1.2 and not shoot everything at f1.2, right? Yeah, I had to learn that the hard way. And one tip here, sometimes if you have an object that's moving a bit, it's easier to focus it once, and then if it's moving, not turning the focus ring, it's easier if you're going back and forth a little bit. Believe me, trust me, that's easier than trying to focus with the ring. So, bonus tip here. Oh, and while we're talking about focusing, there's one thing you should also know about this lens, and that is that this lens close focuses to 0.5. Classic Leica lenses, they only focus to 0.7. Newer Leica lenses also go further down to, I think, 0.4. But the rangefinder still only can focus until 0.7. That means if you cross that 0.7, you can't focus with the rangefinder anymore. And well, you do not have a resistance here. Normal Leica lenses have a resistance here, and if you cross the 0.7 or if you get to 0.7, there is this little resistance, and you know, okay, from now on you have to use the display. That is what this lens does not have. So keep that in mind if you're using it. And with that said, let's come to a point where I tell you about things I do not like about this lens. Don't get me wrong, I think this is an excellent lens with a great look. I love shooting it, but there are a few things that I do not like, and I think you should know about it. And the first thing that I absolutely hated at the beginning, I really hated it. I I was thinking about selling this lens and buying another one is that it doesn't have a focus tab. I know some of you like that it doesn't have a focus tab, some do not like the focus tab, but I absolutely love the focus tab. And like I said at the beginning, it was very hard for me to focus it. Like I want to focus it, I got around that. By now it's fine for me, but I still would love to see a focus tab on this one. The second thing that I don't hate it, but the second thing I would like to see is that in the next iteration of this lens, that I get rid of that absolutely classical look. And what I mean with the classical look is the chrome mount 40 lens hood. This is something that, I don't know, it would be much nicer if this one would be black. So as you can see, not a lot to complain about this lens. I absolutely love it. It feels great, great haptics, great look. It has character that many of the modern lenses do not have. And if you stop it down, you get a pretty sharp lens. And even though 40mm is not one of those classical focal length and doesn't have frame lengths in the rangefinder, I think it is a great always-on lens for everyone that likes to shoot those normal range of lenses. Of course, if you're going a step back, you have a great 35mm, and if you go a step forth, well, you have a great 50mm. So two lenses in one, basically. And the price is great. With $1,000, well, there's nothing to compare. Leica has nothing to compare. You have to pay at least $7,000 for a Leica lens that gives you the look that this one gives you. So if you're searching for a great compact lens with a very high aperture, but you cannot afford one of those crazy expensive Noctilux lenses from Leica, well, this one's absolutely worth a look. Voigtländer also has a 35, 1.2, a 51.2, they even have a 51.0, but well, this one is far away from being compact. So for me, I absolutely love it. It's my always-on lens, honestly. I'm planning to buy a 28mm Leica lens and a 50mm Leica lens, but if I had to choose only one lens to go out, I think I would still use this one. I think, for me, this is one of the best all-around lenses to buy. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.